Welcome to Comedians on Technology, People and Drugs. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sam Joseph. We're joined with Joseph Vaughan, our other super co-host, and we're very privileged today to have Ogi Perry joining us. Hey, Ogi, how's it going? You all right?
Yeah, it's going good, man. It's good. It's good to be here. It's my first podcast, by the way, so this is exciting.
Good stuff. Yes, yes. And do you want to just tell us a little bit about your angle on comedy, how long you've been doing it?
Well, I've been doing comedy since I was 18. I'm 20 now. And it was really a bad time to start, to be honest, because I was like, wow, finally, I found this thing that completes me. And now it's gone. It sort of disappeared and I fell into a depression for like a year. But it's back now, so I'm doing better.
Is comedy and depression a kind of a do they go kind of hand in glove? Is it almost like a prerequisite for comedians?
It's a bit of a stereotype, but I guess, yeah.
No, I mean, you hear that the big boys talking about it, that kind of insecurity and all that is a sort of as a prerequisite for it. That's not your take.
I mean, I see that too, but I don't think it's every single comic. Yeah, I've seen some comics and they're like completely fine, and I'm like, how the fuck? But yeah,
who's fine? Nobody's fine.
No, I know people who are fine. It's like people with families and stuff. They got too much on their plate to not be all right.
Dude, I've got a family and it's not fine.
Oh no. I got a depression bedroom right now, man. If this camera drops 2 centimeters, you're gonna see like all the mess.
So how did it work during the pandemic then? Did you do a couple of gigs and then it kicked in? How did that work?
So during the pandemic, I did a bunch of Zoom gigs, and I was in this competition, So You Think You're Funny, which, by the way, fun fact, is incorrectly advertised the starting like comedian competition. But in reality, the starting comics will go there, and the person with like 5 years of experience and 700 gigs will win. And it's fucked because on the requirement form, it says no more than 15 gigs. So me, being a good boy that I am, I didn't do more than 15. So I did maybe 8 Zoom shows. And then I got into the competition and got kicked out the first round. So
that's like a boxing competition where you've got you're supposed to turn up, novice, and then some guy turns up who's had like 40, 50 fights and then just, takes you out for the money.
Pretty bad. Yeah. I mean, the guy who won, I'm not going to shit talk him because he was actually pretty funny. And I don't know how long he's been doing it, but best of luck to him. Hope he's enjoying that success.
So what about you say it completed you, right? So you get to a point in your life and you think, right, this is what I got to do. So what was the sort of the inspiration behind it? What's the sort of material that you were kind of interested in? What did you want to say? What was your story?
Well, it all started when I accidentally came across this clip of Bill Burr on Conan when I was like 15. And I was like, this guy's hilarious. What is he a comedic actor? What stand up? What the fuck stand up? And then I have a Netflix subscription, so I checked out You People Are All the Same, which is one of my favorite comedy specials, and I was blown away. I didn't know what to do at that period of my life, and I just kept because I thought I wanted to be an actor, right? And realized, nah, that's not for me. It's kind of like a little. Not saying all actors, but it's kind of a bit of a phony industry, right? You got to say what, and I want more control over, if I was going to risk my future on a dream, So, so I checked that out. I did some thinking for a while, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, let's try and be a comic. But I was like, I had to wait till because I had very overprotective parents, so I couldn't do shit for the first 3 years. Then I turned 18. First week after being 18, I was in the clubs. So, yeah.
What kind of clubs? Dungeons? No.
That came later, but the Lions Den Comedy Club.
Oh, right, okay.
Which is a very difficult room. I don't know if you guys have ever been.
No.
I've been there, and every single act is bombed apart from the headline. There's 17 people on the bill. It was very funny. A few months ago, I brought my girlfriend with me, and all my friends were just dying, and she was the only one laughing, and all the comics were just locking eyes with her, and she was their lifeline.
Yeah. Go on.
So where's Lions Den? Where's that about?
Oh, that's a great club. You should. And anyway, it's every Tuesday. I'm always there. It's at Bar Rumba near the Piccadilly Circus tube station.
All right. Sorry, I've just got to say this. It's a shout out to MC Skibade, rest in peace. He used to play down there. Jungle MC. Sorry, totally digress, but it's very, very sad news for the jungle scene and generally the scene in the UK and the world. Sorry, he was a legend. He used to play down in Bar Rumba back in the day.
So good, man. Rest in peace, Mitch's.
MC Skibade.
No. There's another guy that died there. He was the owner, Tim. I think they called him Mitch. Hopefully that doesn't get to the club, because I feel like Felix will be upset at me. But yeah, he started that. Rest in peace. Yeah, I have like social awkwardness issues, so yeah, it's getting tense for me now. I'm sweating. I don't know if you can see it.
Are you? I mean, well, see, it's a lifelong problem of mine of being socially awkward. I've spent a lot of time only recently starting to get on top of it. I kind of written a book on like it's called How to Interact with Humans After Spending a Lot of Time with Computers, as I've like gradually pieced together how to deal with these things. I hope we can help you relax into it. Like I was going to say, one of the things I've noticed is, I find doing the stand-up, very enjoyable. I love creating material, but it can be very tense. I find the podcast by contrast is actually quite relaxing. I just love talking. I'm doing all this because I want to find people to talk to, and it's sometimes difficult to get them to talk to me in the streets. But like it's the podcast itself. It's interesting, the whole with the technology. You can create something and actually get it out there. I mean, not our show necessarily, but shows can have a huge reach in a way that a small comedy gig to like a 20 or 30 audience, I mean, obviously you can't, that's a fantastic thing to have. That live comedy experience is sort of a unique event, but it's odd to me in my mind that you have to go through this sort of the sweating and the things for the live performance, when you can do something like a podcast, and that can have such an extraordinary reach. It boils my mind, but leads into one of my regular questions, which is how does technology affect your life? And it might seem like kind of what's that kind of weird thing, particularly you're a lot younger than we are, and maybe it's just like, oh, what technology, what's but you were talking about the Zoom gigs. Obviously you're quite familiar with Zoom, but how do you feel about the way in which social media technology, everything is affecting your life, your comedy, and so on?
I study computer science at uni right now, so I fucking hate it, to be honest. Just fucking all of it. It's drained any passion I have for any technology.
Right, and that's you doing computer science. I mean, as it happens, I've been a professor of computer science, and I have very mixed feelings about the way in which it's taught. I think particularly computer science is it certainly, according to some of my former colleagues, the maths people have kind of taken over computer science, and so it's all about this very dry algorithms. This is actually the stuff that you learn in a computer science degree, very, very different from the stuff that you might actually be using if you were out earning healthily in the tech sector, which is very buoyant at the moment. But so you've been kind of put off computer science perhaps as a career, but in terms of like having access to Zoom during the lockdown, social media and so on, do you see that as just like, is it even of note? Like I think for Joe and myself, because we're older gentlemen, there's been this like mind-blowing revolution that now we can do everything online. We can connect to people. I mean, like back when I was growing up, you couldn't share photos on Facebook. You had little folders and binders of printed out photos at home. I mean, they weren't printed out. You had to send them off to the chemist and come back. But I mean, do you in your mind, do you make a like, oh wow, this stuff on the phone is really cool, or it's just like you take it for granted?
Well, I take it for granted, because I grew up with it. This is the norm for me. I didn't experience any change. I think like the most change I experienced was when I was like 7, and I found that YouTube existed.
Right.
And that like changed my world for like ever. I mean, those Zoom gigs were rough. You do any?
I didn't. I was sort of considering it. Both Joe and I, we did our course last year, and it was sort of coming tail end of the pandemic, and the live gigs were starting back up, and there was enough that the Zoom ones were not it sounds kind of rough. What people have talked to me about is just, it's like you don't hear any audience. You're basically doing it to a wall, you know. And
Oh, yeah.
can you tell us, particularly since we haven't done it, the more of the actual how would you describe blow by blow the experience of doing a Zoom gig?
I think the moment I realized Zoom was very different to like traditional comedy was when my brother walked in and started heckling me from the other room. And I bombed for 5 minutes afterwards because it took me a minute to get him out. It's like, I need to tell you something. I'm like, not now. No, it's not your stage time. And he stays like, oh, Mom wants you to know. And I'm like, not now. Not to get out the room. And this is. So the minute passes, the audience is like, what the fuck? They're like all looking at me confused. I go into my new material and I bomb horrendously, horribly.
But the Zoom audience, are they a bit like the mock the week, the Zoom thing? Are they 30 people in 30 different locations and you can see all their faces, or how was it set up?
Yeah, you can see their faces. And you can see them on, like, it also like flicks between depending on which mode you have it. So it's like a slideshow of just disappointment. It is fucking horrible.
Right.
And then, so I got blackout drunk right after my set. I don't know if you know Mark. I think that's his name. He's an autistic comic. And he came on after me. He was doing some material on autism. And he was like, I am autistic, which means I'm socially awkward, but it won't be as awkward as Ogi's set. And at what point, my soul left my body. And during the gig as well, I was stammering and shit. I was trying to do some crowd work. And Kyle Wallace, I love Kyle. You guys know Kyle?
I know of him. I think I'm going to be doing GMB next Sunday, so I should be meeting him then. But
he's a lad. But he's not heckling me for my entire set to make it bearable for everyone else.
Right. So these were Zoom gigs organized by Carl at GMB.
But
that was one of your relatively. Sounds like you started with Zoom gigs. So that was one of your relatively early gigs. So yeah, challenging stuff.
One good thing about it is it teaches you how to make your own momentum, because you can't feed off the energy in the room because everyone's in their little rooms, right? So you just got to create your own momentum and stuff. And I feel like it's helped me in, doing stand-up now to an extent.
Right.
I've been back out in the face-to-face gigs like the last few months.
Yeah, definitely. Because
and was that like a relief then after the butt clenching pain of the Zoom ones?
It's great because like most comedy nights have their lights too bright, so you just can't see the audience at all. So when I was bombing, it was a lot more tolerable.
So that probably leads on to sort of my question, right? So we chatted a bit before, and you said some of your material can be, it can go down really, it's Marmite, not necessarily Marmite, wrong cliche, but it's like it can go down really well some places, really badly in others, right? Because it kind of plays on the line, right, between, what we say, good taste, maybe. I don't know what the word would be, but what's the kind of background to that sort of material, and then from a sort of more sort of philosophical point of view, we talk a lot about kind of limits of comedy, what should and shouldn't be fair game for material. You've got the kind of controversies around Jimmy Carr at the minute, some of that stuff. So what's your kind of background to your material and your view on that sort of generally, kind of bigger picture philosophically?
I just want to start out saying I'm only 20, so any opinions I have, please take with a grain of salt. But the way I look at it is each person has their own line, right? And you get a bunch of people in a room, the line pretty much averages out. And the line is different for everyone. For me, I enjoy a lot of like dark comedy, like a lot of I loved Stanhope's special. What's it called? I forgot it. It's really good. But I love Stanhope stuff, and it's very dark stuff. But the way I look at it is, it depends on the room. Like I still think there is room for like dark and edgy comedy because I've been able to do it like somewhat decently and have a few pretty good gigs out of it. But it just depends, like, because you can have people who do dark comedy and it's like awful, like it's just bad. And I feel like some people use the bad jokes as an example for like why all, it's a whole clusterfuck, really. I'm trying my best to like navigate it because it's a very complex issue.
Have you found it? I mean, I absolutely studiously avoid any culture war chat. I just don't do it, right? But in the kind of in the world, has that actually affected you at all yet? In terms of, you know, people won't maybe take you on, or they might think, oh, do you know what I mean? Or have they told you to calm it down, or have you been censored at all?
I had an argument with some guy on stage. Ended up being pretty funny. Like I had some school shooting jokes, you know, and like the thing with dark comedy, I think people have to understand. You have to attempt these jokes for the first time, and sometimes it may not be funny, right? But the attempt, everyone deserves the attempt. And so I'm trying out some new jokes, and I hear a voice telling me to shut the fuck up in the back. We get into it in front of everyone, and he ends up shouting, "I make more money than you." And I responded, "I'm a uni student. Good luck." Or like, "Congrats," something like that. And I got a laugh. So it actually helped kill some time because I was burning through my material. It was a small room. Useful.
It's fascinating stuff.
Heckle, actually, to kind of like say an aspiring comedian who's obviously doing it for, if any money at all, it's going to be very small. It's a very strange heckle, isn't it?
Yeah. It wasn't corporate security.
There's a good, someone was talking about a heckle put down. It was on the Comedian podcast of talking through like, oh, this person, you know, they didn't expect to be a heckler, or they did expect, and they were like preparing their material, and it's like the first time, and so they do a whole riff on, I forget the name of the comedian whose idea this was, but they do a whole riff on like bringing the audience around. Look, this heckler, they've been working on their material, they've been sweating away all day on what they were going to say, and so on, kind of taking the piss out of the fact that you know, it's the comedian who's been sweating all day to generate the material, and sort of how to switch it around. But it's really interesting, Ogi, hearing you talk about the material and the darkness and so on, because you know, I saw you at you know, Rising Star, I think the first time we met, and
yes,
with the school shooting joke, and I think what was particularly funny was your kind of delivery. So I think that the joke, you know, well crafted, but with the delivery and partly with your accent and the style and whatever, is you look kind of a bit edgy and dangerous. So when you're, if you'll forgive me, you know, so as you're doing it, like part of the people in the audience, they're a bit kind of like, oh fuck, is he what is this really? Has he got a manifesto, or whatever happens to be? And that I mean, this is the really difficult thing about comedy, is that they're like that line where you're a little bit afraid about what's going on is actually a rich scene that you can get laughter out of. But as you say, you know, the jokes have got to be really good, or otherwise people are just like, you're being weird about like what's a very touchy subject. So it's tricky, isn't it?
I was at the G&B Dark Delight, and you saw a variety of stand-up there, as you do with all open mics, some good, some bad, but it's all dark themed, and it really helped me gain a lot of perspective on like dark comedy, because I love it. I really like dark stuff, but there were times where I was like, these are just statements, these are your political beliefs in your 50. Like that was it, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
the most withering heckle of your life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those are just statements of your political beliefs.
Obviously, they're allowed to believe, you know. I don't have anything wrong, but it's like, you know, throwing a joke or something, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And but as I think you were saying, Ogi, it's like, I mean, that's the importance of the open mic and the sort of new material, new act nights, is that people, I think, they deserve a space to experiment, right? And like, if you don't have that space to experiment and get it wrong in front of a small number of people, then, you know, but I mean, I'm glad actually Joe, that you mentioned Jimmy Carr, because I think that's then it's a different scale. It's one thing trying out an edgy joke in a small context. It's another putting it in a, you know, and often I think some of those jokes, there's things that I will often feel like, oh, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I am laughing at this because it's so, you know, we live in a society with like lots of boundaries and things that you should and shouldn't do, and sometimes when somebody like transgresses a little part of that in speech, you're kind of like, oh no, I shouldn't laugh at that, but you're trying to keep it in, and you do laugh, and that, you know, so that there's jokes that you would tell with certain groups of friends that you maybe wouldn't want to tell with other groups. But then if you're doing it in your Netflix special, it's a different, I don't know, both Ogi and Joe, do you have strong feelings about you know, that kind of joke in a wider forum?
Joe?
I sort of personally kind of go on the, you know, from the kind of higher philosophical kind of position that it has to be allowed. The chaos has to be allowed.
Right.
Because if you try and put limits to chaos, then you're just going to end up in a bad spot. You end up in sort of ever decreasing circles of it. I think there are certain, like you say, certain platforms where it's inappropriate, like, a best man speech or a christening speech or something like that. You don't want to start dropping like, seriously edgy material and that sort of thing. But I think that just probably comes down to sort of just appropriateness and general good manners. You know what I mean? Because what we're not talking about is kind of a dereliction of manners, because I think manners are obviously very important in the world, and appropriate behaviour and deference and respect in certain situations, of course. But I think that has to be given free expression too, because I think the alternative is very, very bleak. And I suppose that sort of, sorry, going to my next question in a minute, but that's my view on it.
That's better than anything I could possibly say. And I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. So can that be my answer too? I got a question. Go. Sam, what is it about me that makes me look edgy and dangerous specifically?
Well, it's a great question. And I would say that partly it's the moustache, I think. I think, and then it's also the slightly longer hair, like, I mean, it's like a good look. I mean, the kind of, I guess I don't know if I'm kind of like retroactively doing this, but of course, with you doing your comedy about school shootings, reminds me of, like Columbine is of course one of the classics, and the sort of the pictures of the guys in the trench. I don't know, like they had that kind of, there was a little bit of that in there. Maybe I would have to go back. I mean, I will, obviously it's a sensitive subject, because I mean, there's been school shootings in the UK and so on. Obviously people who've lost people in those circumstances is absolutely appalling. I think one of the really interesting things that comes out of, I think the media's analysis is, I think that they say that the mistake, and I've read various articles, the mistake that they made when initially covering these things was they focused on the perpetrators and not on the victims. And this led to this sort of mystique around the perpetrators. And partly that, like, I've got an image in my head of what a school shooter might look like, partly because that's what they were doing, wall to wall, profiles of these people and what was in their minds and so on, what have you. And the problem is that actually maybe fed into the copycats. Because it was like this. Whereas this was a journalist who was saying, retrospectively, he was thinking, what I should have done, instead of focusing all my attention on the perpetrator, is focus on the attention of on the victims and what their experience was like, and that might, who knows, might have had a better thing in the long run. But it's
I understand.
I think I mean, we haven't met in person, obviously, but when I was doing the course with Sam, I get certain reactions to certain things that I say, because it's not immediately obvious from here, but I've got a bit of Nigerian descendancy. Like my grandfather was Nigerian, so I feel like I'm sort of qualified to talk about racial issues, because I grew up with intense racism. I've experienced it all my life. I experienced it just yesterday. I was watching the cup final in the Liverpool-Chelsea game. And when it came to the penalties, there was various references to spears and whips when the black players were there, and that's because I don't look obviously like I have that in my kind of in my genetic mix. So people just feel and that's been part of my life all my life, because that's a kind of just it's how it's been, right? So anyway, when I get up, having experienced direct racism, indirect racism, had fights, been beating people up, the whole thing. So if I get up and talk about it, looking the way I look, people get immediately like, holy shit, like, this is going to be bad. You know what I mean? And it might be bad comedy, it might be terrible comedy, but it's like, but the way that you present, and the thing is, you just don't realize it yourself. I don't realize it because it's me. I just look like a normal, mixed race guy, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's a face I've been looking at all my life. But it's like, but people do react in certain ways according to how you present. It's just really interesting how it works, and like a bit like the rooms. There's no kind of hard and fast around how it's going to come out. but it's just it's really interesting one. I suppose that just evolves over time. I mean, Marcus Birdman, the guy who did our course, he was like, look, you might think you're going to be a certain type of, you know, presenter or whatever, but it will kind of find you. You know what I mean? So if you've got an edge, it's magic, isn't it? Because then people will at least remember you.
Indeed. Well, on that note, I was going to say to Ogi, I mean, I don't know how my feedback on your appearance, but is your appearance carefully cultivated? Have you chosen the moustache and the slightly longer hair because that would get a certain reaction, or that just happens to be how you roll?
This is the look of generosity. So what I mean by that is, I'm in a relationship, and like my girlfriend likes quite long hair, so you know I like long hair too. So I was like, I'll grow my hair out. The mustache, on the other hand, this is for the boys.
Okay.
Because we go out, you know, the pubs. I drink a lot, and they're single. I'm in a relationship, right? So like we're all pretty average looking, right? So to push the women in their direction away from me, I grow out the mustache as a scapegoat, just to funnel it into their way. That's the honest explanation, and it's worked. 2 days ago, some woman said I looked like a painting and called my friend hot. So I was like, I'm glad.
That's an amazing story. And yeah, right. So, but so so it's just it's coincidental. And has nobody mentioned that particular look in relationship to the dark comedy that you've done? Has anybody else brought it up, or is just I'm the first person?
You know, I kind of tick all, like, you know, the boxes. I'm like, you know, skinny, tall, white, long hair, mustache. So yeah, like I've been told actually that I look quite disarming. This was like a few years ago, before the mustache and hair. So when I did my offensive jokes that hit harder. So I don't know what it is, but I've been called a school shooter a bunch, if that changes anything.
Was that before you came up with the idea from the jokes? Were people, was there some of that coming, and then you thought, oh, and they actually gave you the idea for the jokes, did it?
Yeah, like that. I have a joke. Well, I don't think it's gonna work here because the way it's structured. But I have a bit, right? And then there's a laugh, and it's an awkward silence, and then I go, I was actually voted most likely to shoot up my school, and that always gets a pretty big laugh. And it's true.
It did the night that I saw you perform. Yeah, it's so well, which I think maybe leads me into a question of mine, if I may, and then we'll go back to another one of Joe's. But
Yes.
You've already mentioned, you know, about actually, you know, you're doing the moustache and the hair for other people. You know, one of our key questions is about, you know, people and relationships. Which are the ones that are most important to you? You know, I guess you're not a total loner comic road. I'm like isolated from everybody else. Yeah, which are the most important relationships for you in your life, would you say?
My girlfriend, obviously. My heart's with her right now. She's 2 hours away from the bombs being dropped in Ukraine by car.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's fucking scary. But my bros, shout up Big L and Big J from Wickham.
Right. Is that two older brothers, you, or just?
Oh no, they're who I grew the mustache for.
Oh right, that's the friends
Yeah.
who you're basically reducing your raw sexual charisma so that they can score.
Exactly. It's the burden I carry. But
serious friendship.
yeah,
stuff, man.
I've known him for 7 years. Like we went to secondary school together. We always kept in touch, and now we sort of just abuse drugs together. It's great.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so well, I mean, I'm not so much. That's the drugs kind of hook there, right? I'm not here to, you know, and to preface this, I'm not asking anyone ever to kind of, you know, talk about their own personal, potentially, you know, illegal activities, right? It's not what I'm here to talk about. But I'm interested in any knowledge, awareness you have of the current research and sort of movement towards incorporating sort of plant medicines and psychedelics into kind of a mainstream discussion.
I've read like some of these papers and stuff like support this. I gotta say, I know first-hand accounts of my friends who have had like mental issues and have used like these things to like overcome problems and stuff. And yeah, I'm in full support for it. Honestly, I think it should be taken up.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm a big advocate for it. I mean, I guess I'm a kind of a novice, you know, try hard, you know, middle-aged guy doing comedy second, but I'm primarily a kind of a plant medicine and psychedelics advocate, because just a kind of a little sideways move into some of my own experiences. I've been to into Peru a couple of times and worked with indigenous healers and traditions out there in a couple of different medicines. And so it's just to kind of run through. I mean, have you heard of ayahuasca, for example? I mean, is that something that you know much about?
Yes, I do know about ayahuasca. I've never tried it because I'm a student and plane tickets are expensive. But yeah, I'm very interested in trying that. I'm also interested in doing shrooms. I will be doing those soon, hopefully. I'm big into the marijuana, if you couldn't guess.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the mushrooms are a very interesting one because you've got the kind of the scale of, you've got the people that are microdosing, and you've got the people who are maxi dosing. So I don't know if you're aware of the kind of extremes of it, but kind of in the middle, there's some very interesting research going on at the minute about psilocybin and traumatic brain injury. So, for example, in athletes, so rugby players, boxers, anyone who's had kind of army veterans, people who have repetitive head injuries or head trauma, and the potential through, it's still very early stages and the studies are still observational, but to look at the potential for psilocybin to help to regrow some of these areas in the brain that are affected by repeated traumatic force.
Oh, wow.
So that's a really interesting field of research.
And I think, of course, we have to say there for our listeners, for anybody who's considering taking any of these substances, that they are very, very potentially strong mind-affecting substances. The context in which you take them is extremely important, and I think if anyone's considering taking any of these things, you should seek medical advice. Of course, Joe took them in the context of people who've got generations and generations of knowledge of these things, in a different country. So it's these are powerful things with which one has to be extremely careful.
Yeah, safe and responsible use, because it for the individual, obviously, it's a tragedy if they get in over their heads and have a traumatic experience, which is ultimately detrimental. But also for kind of everybody else who wants to use them safely. It's like these kind of very small level amounts of extreme cases can kind of set the whole conversation back. And what we're actually trying to do is to say, look, raise awareness in the mainstream. That there are people, for example, kind of all walks of life, but in all ages are going to be affected by this. And particularly if we're talking about brain function and sort of, rebuilds, if you like, then certainly for people who are aging, this could be something which is a real game changer. So we don't want it to kind of, the research just to kind of disappear and fall by the wayside.
And I guess I was gonna say I'm a bit out of touch actually in what the situation is in the UK, because I think in the US, my knowledge is informed through listening to lots of US comics, that I think medical marijuana is now pretty common in the States. And what they talk about in a lot of states is, you need to go and see a doctor, but you kind of say, oh, I have these headaches. Well, have you tried marijuana? And then you can, so the access to it has become, I'm not sure what the situation is in the UK.
Yeah, go for it.
My friend, her mom is actually a doctor, and she's in one of the head hospitals, the big one in Bristol. And under no circumstances are they allowed to prescribe marijuana for anything.
Right.
It's
and so
very difficult to get a green card. My friend, he's 22. He has rheumatoid arthritis, one of the few cases in the entire world for his age and severity. Can't get a green card. And so he's literally smoking it illegally, and it helps with his pains and stuff. So there's still a way to go.
It's legal for medicinal cannabis is legal here, but like you say, it has to go to the kind of CEO of the hospital trust or something like that. The approval process is very difficult. So when you go to conferences like Cannabis Europa conference, and there's a conference coming up soon about psychedelics. This is part of the discussion. You have policymakers there and politicians there, and you're trying to present the evidence to say, look, this is something that we need to take more seriously, because the benefits are, greatly outweigh the risks. And obviously, I mean, there's quite a lot chatted about cannabis and the types of cannabis that's smoked and the potential for kind of psychotic episodes and things like that. And that can't be just swept under the carpet. We have to be able to have a mature conversation about it.
Well, was there also development? I mean, you both may know more than I do about in some areas, like was it decriminalizing it in Brixton or decriminalizing possession of cannabis or something? What was? I mean, I'm like, I guess I thought that there was. I'm maybe mixing up US and UK policy. I thought there was a move towards, it becoming more acceptable in the UK, but maybe that's not the case.
Joe?
So there's been various times. There's lots of kind of cross currents to this, right? So there's a very strong movement towards decriminalization and legalization, and from a medical point of view. And so that's it seems strange that you've got something which is legal in a sort of medicinal context, but kind of illegal on a kind of street level. Do you know what I mean? Some people say, oh, it's perfectly reasonable because you're trying to discourage the usage and all the rest of it. But it does seem slightly strange that you've got something that's safe medically, but is, you're you know what I mean? So there's kind of two different speeds to this. Yeah. So I think, and it all depends on the kind of the prevailing political winds at a given point in time. But Sadiq Kahn has commissioned a report, and I think in certain boroughs, I think there's a word for it. They're trying to say, well, if you get caught with cannabis, you're not going to go directly through the criminal justice system. You're going to get redirected. I think it's called redirection or something like that. So you're not going to go through the criminal justice system. You're going to go through another route. It's like, maybe some counselling. Why are you using it? What's the background? Do you understand the risks? And trying to kind of, steer people away from it that way, and take them out of the criminal justice system. But anyway, getting a bit deep now. Lighten up again. Go back down the comedy route. That's my.
Well, I was going to maybe take us into. I think we'll maybe create a moment for. I mean, Ogi, if you do want to tell us more about your feelings on the different substances, obviously it can be a sensitive subject for people who feel strongly about it, but might not necessarily want to share information about that on a podcast. So it's entirely up to you. But option for you, I'll give you sort of a little get out clause. So feel free to tell us anything that you feel strongly about that area. But my next question coming up is about, does spirituality play any part in your life? I'm not religious. I'm sort of agnostic myself, but I'm just very interested in people's, perceptions of spirituality, whether they had, a religious background. A lot of these substances, as Joe and I have talked about before, play a major part in the development of religions and so on. But so I'll give you a sort of a get out. So if you want to jump in on more on the old, substances, we're very interested. If you want to tell us about spirituality, that's good too.
I could do a bit of both, but I gotta say, there's plenty of ways to do drugs responsibly now. You can literally buy testing kits off eBay that will tell you if your cocaine is actually cocaine and if your magic mushrooms are magic mushrooms. So, like one of my friends who I party with, he's got some background in chemistry. So we just let him do these chain reactions with our drugs, and we're like, all right, it's safe.
No, I'll just stop you. I mean, that sounds great. Although I guess if they're kits you're buying off eBay, is there then the sort of double question of, can I trust the kits I'm buying off eBay? I guess you feel your friend in your chemical friend, shall we call him, he feels confident that the kits he's buying off eBay are testing the correct thing.
Yeah, I mean, they've used a lot more than me, but they're alive. They got like no serious side effects. No one's ever OD'd. So yeah, do them responsibly. And on that note, 2 days ago, I did spike my friend with like marijuana though, and he smokes quite regularly. But we're in the pub, and I got this weed vape, right? It's like I smoke incognito.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, you want to hit this vape? And he starts. The guy gets annihilated. It's hilarious. He didn't mind. He had some more afterwards. So I'm not a bad person. It's a case by case basis.
Yeah, I've got to say that
brilliant.
Sounds like Ogi, as a professional comedian there, knew what his friend was going to expect. But we wouldn't encourage any listeners of the show to try this activity. Could end in mixed results, shall we say?
I don't know. It was pretty funny. He's not like you went on a tirade. It was hilarious. Lots of good fun.
Indeed.
But I'm the guest. These are the guys you should listen to.
Right. Well, maybe we'll have them on the show. Go on, Joe.
So just on your, I'm interested in this because from a sort of, younger person's point of view. So things like, you know, you say some of your friends have had benefits from using plant medicines in terms of, you know, solving certain issues, anything sort of top line without obviously, you know, I'm not going to name any names, but what sort of stuff have you seen happening with, like, you know, plant medicine, psychedelics?
So my friend with like arthritis, it helps with his swelling and pain, which is very good. I have other friends with like severe like mental handicaps, which like they're like so mentally ill that they sometimes cannot function in proper society, and they'll use occasionally. And like I've seen the difference before and after. They're also like properly medicated, like antidepressants and stuff. So yeah, and another thing with drugs though is to be aware with like what kind of medications you're using. Like for example, like shrooms and antidepressants can like lead to brain damage. You probably know that, Joe.
Yeah. I mean,
like
that's the thing.
10 times were experienced.
All psychedelics, plant medicines come with kind of contraindications, right? Particularly around SSRI usage. So, for example, if you want to go to an ayahuasca ceremony, you have to stop taking any SSRI type medications and a raft of others. So it's very important that you go to a practitioner who understands that, because of, like, you know, as I say, you know, the potential dangers of mixing, you know, kind of high powered sort of psychedelics, you know, tryptamines with, you know, SSRIs, which can regulate, you know, sort of dopamine and serotonin functions. I mean, without going too deep into the brain chemistry, I'm certainly not an expert in it, but yeah, get the right advice, you know, before you go down that route. And it might not be for someone in Netherlands, for example, where it's legal, or kind of has a sort of, you know, one of those kind of grey area statuses. A lot of people are kind of knocked back from doing official, you know, kind of, you know, psilocybin work, for example, because, you know, their psychological profile is too risky. So it's something to be aware of.
Of course. And like I don't do any drug handed to me, right? Like I was at the pub like last week, and there was this guy, and he ended up being a Nazi. But it's an entire story. I don't know if we have time.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
So okay, so I started drinking, and this guy, he walks out, right, and he's talking to me, and he's like, "Oh man, I hate it here. They all look at me like I'm dirty because they're fucking commies." And then in my head I was like, "This is someone I can drink with." So he's like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm Serbian, master." He's like, "No way, I found my heart in the Balkans." He's telling me about all this stuff he's been doing in the Balkans, like finding his like soul and stuff like that. And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's cool." And he starts showing me photos from his trip, and I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be innocent." And he's like, "Yeah, I went to a skinhead bar." And I was like, "Huh?" And then he shows me the photo, and it's a bunch of like bald white people Nazi saluting with him in it.
Oh my goodness.
And he looked at me and he goes, "Roman salute," and winks. So then there's more photos of him with like Nazi memorabilia. And then he offered me a line of Coke. So
oh my goodness.
Take it.
You know, watch your drink there, man. Jesus.
Oh yeah, it was very. I kept an eye on it. Just doing off his key in front of me. It's hilarious.
Strange times. But so, just to go back to the previous question, the other door.
Oh yeah,
is this no, not at all. No, that was an excellent story, and we definitely appreciated, you know, hearing what you were willing to share on the, you know, on the other side. I just wondered, and the answer might be a quick no, but, you know, is there any, you know, religious or spiritual connection in your life ever? Maybe, who knows, in the future? Is that or is that like, I don't know, you're like, God, what? Who cares?
What's spirituality? Is this in relation to drugs, or just like regular spirituality?
It could be, or just, I mean, like, for example, you know, like that you might have had, your parents were religious and they brought you up in a particular religion, or, you know, just to, like, have you ever wondered what's out there? I mean, some young people, I mean, some old people like myself, are plagued by questions of like, what does it all mean? You know, as you can sort of tell from my, you're busy choking there at my ridiculous old man.
No,
he's done a bong. He's done a bong on the side.
It's a home, man.
You know, and you know, people usually do have to in order to make me sound interesting. But it's sort of a broad, open question. Doesn't have to be connected to drugs in any sense. It's more just about, you know, do you think about the big wide beyond? Has someone tried to indoctrinate you? Or?
my experience with like religion was I was a Christian, and I remember being like 3 years old, and my dad was like, "Oh yeah, do you believe in God?" And I was in the bath, we were washing me, and I go, "Yeah," and he went, "Why'd you believe in that shit?" And that derailed everything. I am maybe I don't know. I'm more inclined to believe it all goes black, but
Right.
I think it could be possible spirituality. But like when I do drugs like weed and stuff, I wouldn't say I get more spiritual, but I get more empathetic. Like I think the best way to describe it is I believe in things, but I find different ways of getting to that point
Oh yeah.
apart
Oh,
from my beliefs, and it's fascinating because
oh, go on. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's insane. So like, I don't remember it because I'm always too high when I come up with these ideas. But I'm like, whoa, that's another way to get to why this is and how that person feels and stuff. And I do feel like more empathetic when I come out of it and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, when you say empathetic, that means like subsequent, when you're talking to people, you
yeah,
find yourself it's easier to understand where they're coming from. Is that what you mean
yeah.
by
Like
empathetic?
I'd call myself like a very understanding person, but like yeah, pretty much. Like it just I have a greater appreciation for almost like everything, and I understand other people's hardships and stuff like that.
Mm.
Like a lot better. Like it's weird. It's like I could put myself in their shoes and feel exactly what they're feeling, like each step of the way. Like I go on this because I hallucinate on weed. Uh,
Okay.
I saw Darth
I
Maul.
I think you saw Darth Maul.
Yeah,
Darth Maul,
2 days
yeah.
ago, he walked in my room and waved and disappeared.
I mean, I did have a Halloween where I dressed up as Darth Maul. So I'm sorry if I intruded your
Well,
your
this takes me back to some of the discussion around technology, right? And some of the I don't know, we'd call them archetypes, or some of these sort of motifs that go through these sort of sci-fi movies and things like that, and the types of experiences people that have on plant medicine type experience, either high dose mushrooms or even on cannabis, which is not necessarily associated with that. And obviously in the Amazon, I've been to Peru a couple of times. As I say, there's a sort of the belief system is that each plant has an energy, there's a kind of a almost like a deity attached to it. And the more I kind of get into it, the more my religious experiences here without the plants become deeper. You sort of get more of a sense of kind of the real kind of background to Catholicism. I'm a Catholic, so I go to mass, and I sort of, it used to be very formulaic. I mean, some of the sung Latin just takes is transcendental, right? You're in that kind of cathedral of noise, and it's designed for that experience. It's a sensory thing, right?
Oh yeah.
But it's there was a point where it's very formulaic. You have responses. Someone says this, you say that. Someone says this, you say that, and it's like it takes all the kind of magic and mystery out of it. Of course. Whereas now I see it much more in the sense of you are connecting to to our bigger energy, to our bigger thing. I mean, it's almost impossible to describe what it is with mere words, but the feeling when you have it.
That's really beautiful, man. Honestly, like despite me not being religious myself, I do understand the great, like the sense of community and stuff. I think it's a very beautiful thing. And I think the good far outweighs the bad that it's like done, because I like religion's two-way street. I'm mostly inclined to believe it's a positive thing, and I am for it. So
yeah. Well, from my side, it's great to hear what you're describing about empathetic, because like well, particularly you're 20. I wish I'd been empathetic at 20. I struggled. I struggle with being empathetic these days. People tell me or I think it's the voices in my head tell me I'm getting better. But yeah, it's sort of encouraging to hear. I've been to hear that from younger people. Joe, we're so old.
No, mate, I'm not having that. I'm not having that at all, dude.
Not having that,
but I'm
okay.
interested in where you're performing next, mate. I'd really like to come and hear your Dark Materials. Where are you up next, man?
Let me check the old calendar.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm what date is it? 28th. Okay. Wednesday, We Are Funny Project. The second of Wednesday, March. 2nd of March,
Friday.
No, it's
No, oh
Wednesday.
no. Oh, second. It's second. It's the 2nd of March on
Yes.
Wednesday. We are funny, right?
Yeah.
Nice one.
And then
Yeah,
after that, you got anything else coming up? We can plug you on.
Can I promote something really quickly?
please do, please do.
My friend, she has an OnlyFans. If I could plug that here really quickly, she's fallen on. She could use the money. So yeah, this is. I haven't seen it, but my friend, I know. I've put it for a long. She's got great taste. This is some of the best porn you'll ever fucking see. All right. So you just gotta check this out. I'll get her stuff
Well,
up
and
now.
I mean, if you don't worry, we can put links. You know, we can put not just your date for Wednesday, but all of your upcoming dates into the show notes and other links. And you know, we'll go through and all different things that we mentioned in the show. We'll go into the.
Oh yeah.
Two middle-aged men trying to think. I'd never OnlyFans. I'm not going to pretend I don't know what it is. No, but I know it.
Yeah.
Well, go on then. What is it?
Oh, it's well, OnlyFans. Well, basically, if you want to see my like friend's tits, it's like £4 a month, isn't it? So it's pretty cheap. Like the curiosity, that like the view is curious. You might as well check it out. She's a good friend of mine for a long time. Highly recommend.
Any pitfalls that you reckon the new person should avoid?
The biggest one is potentially maybe don't start it before the start of a global pandemic, because you'll leave you feeling empty and alone. But apart from that, a lot of people, like fellow comics, it doesn't come out of a place like it's bad, but you want to make it someone else like feel good. So someone will have a like not a great set, and people will be like, oh wow, great set, you know. And in reality, that person like bombed for like 5 minutes. And a lot of people will try and blow smoke up your ass in the scene. And I think you just got to stay true and objective, and you got to have like belief in your own opinions and what's good and what's bad. Yeah, that's the biggest one, to be honest.
How it feels, I guess, is the thing, isn't it?
It'll hurt more if you like know your shit, like, but eventually you will get better, and that's how you improve. Because you get comics that have done comedy for a long time, and they haven't improved much, and it's like it's scary, it's sad, and yeah, so don't become one of those people. Existential dread right into the camera.
How do you know? That's the thing, isn't it? Is it basically denying the reality of it to yourself? Is that what it is? Is it people that are deluding themselves?
Yep.
You know, I suppose the thing, right, is the awareness, isn't it? If someone's doing it, they're self-consciously shit and they know it, but they're enjoying themselves anyway, and it's an okay way to spend 5 minutes a week.
Yep.
But it's that kind of like, oh no, I'm going to make it, when the reality is telling me something else.
Like people can make it. Like if you want to try and make it, please go ahead. But you got to be real with yourself. Otherwise, that's not going to happen. But yeah, like another thing to like try to improve is play smaller rooms of 10, 13, 7 people. There's a lot of small rooms in London and non-bringers you can go to. And yeah, do small rooms. Like, because bringer gigs are naturally very like receptive, and they're good gigs. Like when they're done well, the audience is amazing, right? Like Kyle at G&B, he puts a lot of work into his nights. They're great nights, very good, Sam. You'll see when you go there. You too, Joe. But it does make the audience more agreeable. So the bar in your joke writing could fall if you don't, you know, tackle it in your head mentally.
Yeah. And how do you approach writing? Do you have a kind of formula you work to? Do you think, is it, you know, you say you talked about the pause, you write something, there's an awkward silence, then you come in with another one. I mean, is that something that came naturally to you? You just felt like it should be there, or how do you approach the writing part?
Well, it depends. Sometimes I'll be in the shower, I'll come up with an idea before I sleep. And as soon as you get that idea, I recommend you just write it down, because you're in the moment right now. You'll probably get a few more lines to really push yourself in that direction. Like there's been times I've been in bed and I'm like, that's pretty funny. Let me go get up and write that. And I'll just write it. And some of that material, Sam, is the material you're seeing now that I'm doing. So
good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. It's great to hear. I guess as a sort of possible wrapping up sort of question, as I think we're coming up on time. But yeah, so you know, you've got the computer science degree, you've got, you know, hanging out with your mates and having fun and chilling out. You've got the comedy. is it is there a sort of a plan there about where you want it to go, or you're just sort of like you're happy to drift and see which direction you flow in, or how do you see it evolving over the coming days?
My plan before, like, I plan to like pop off or anything, is to get good before I release anything, because I'm well aware I'm still in my infancy and I'm pretty fucking shit. So I'm gonna get good, and that'll take 5 more years, 7 more years to become like okay, and then I'll start putting stuff out. Then we'll see. But I think this is an avenue that I've been interested in for well over 4 or 5 years of my life. I don't see it changing. I feel about it the same. As soon as I picked the microphone, my first gig ever, I was like, yeah, this is it. Yeah, there's nothing's gonna top this. So I'll be around.
All right. Well,
Hopefully.
all power to you. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Ogi. You've shared some fantastic thoughts. I think it's a fantastic line to end on there. I'm, you say you want to get good. I think you're pretty good as you are. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing you, in a few more years when you're exceeding everybody's expectations. That's fantastic. So yeah, I've been Sam Joseph. We've had Joe Vaughan. We've been speaking to Ogi Perry. If you want to help support the show, we've got a patreon.com. Comedians On is the place to go. You can help donate to the show, get access to special material. You can get access to our Slack community and chat where exciting comedians like Ogi and Johnny Shimon are around. And yeah, Ogi, one last final message from yourself.
My friend's OnlyFans. Her Twitter is @subby_with_you, and she'll have a link to her OnlyFans there. Be true, but pick it up.
We'll get that in the show notes. Fantastic. Thanks very much, Ogi. We really appreciate you being on the show.